Yo, now it's the Red Blue Podcast crew. Reviewing flicks, both old and new. Red and blue, not political. Nah, man, chill. It was Marvel versus DC till we lost that thrill. Don't stress the episode, don't ask the season. We double up franchises, don't ask for a reason. Mochi's got rules that nobody gets. His takes on movies, they're wild as it gets. He's got Superbald Mac and Gray by his side. Trying to keep it sane while they're in for the ride. Mochi's measures are out of control, but in the end he's got the final role. Yeah, that Blue Podcast, come check the scene. Movies old and new, know what I mean?
And we are live. Welcome to the show. Today we talk about Reservoir Dogs, a classic, a movie that many of us heard about. And for the first time, I did happen to see it for the show. How are you, Matt?
I'm fine. Happy to be here. It's my first time too. I never see this movie before, so yeah, it was a unique experience to see this movie. And yeah, I'm curious to talk about this with you guys. And how you doing?
I am doing great. And what about you, Superbald?
I'm doing good.
Amazing. Now, with that being said, today is kind of special for many reasons. It's been 5 years now that I started doing YouTube, and the channel wasn't the way it is now. I used to do so many different things, and it's in July, actually, very soon, it will be the third anniversary of this podcast here. I started in 2022 this podcast with Cole, and I never knew it would last that long with that many people. Thank you guys for joining me most of the time, most of the weeks. That's amazing. I like it. You make the show great, and I like
you.
your costume, super
Thank you.
bald. I think
Oh, I don't know what you're talking about. I dress like this all the time.
sure. I think you were the one that chose
Yes.
Reservoir Dog.
Yes.
So I'll ask you why.
I'll get into the details later, but this is a movie that had a profound impact on me a long time ago. Yeah, I'll get into that later. But yeah, this is a movie dear to me.
That's amazing. I feel you. I enjoyed it. And I was surprised because sometimes movie before my time are not that great. And sometimes I find that I find the movies very slow, boring, and all. When it's before my time, sometimes it's hard. So thank you for suggesting this movie. And I will let Matt start the discussion on Reservoir Dog. What did you think of the movie, Matt?
Yeah, it's an interesting movie to talk about. It's the first movie of Tarantino, and you can see this unique formula was there in the first movie, and he used this more formula again and again by after that. And for so many fan of Tarantino, this movie is the best for them. I understand why for a certain element. Not for me, not my favorite movie of this director, but it's a great movie. I like the concept. You follow this bunch thief after the ice go wrong, and he go back to a safe place to talk about that, and someone is injured, some people missing, and all the movies about the dialogue, about all the way the character dialogue with each other, the evolution of them, and you not see big action in this movie. The cast is a little show in the middle of the movie, but it's not the interesting part of this movie. Is the character, is the way is interact between them, and you have a phenomenal cast behind them. You have Hervé Curtel, you have Tim Roth, you have Steve Buscemi, amazing actor, and yeah, the concept is interesting. I don't feel for me is the best movie Tarantino have done, or is one the perfect movie. But I understand why it's a cult movie and is a classic of this time and one of the best movie of Tarantino. The dialogue was so great and some character was interesting and you have some twists and the story are great. You have some point that many characters think you have a rat in the team, and the cop the cop come to take to arrest them, and some character go crazy about that. And some moment we have this bloody sequence when a cop is tortured by another character, and he cut this hair. That's a brutal scene in this movie. And so yeah, in the end, it was a good experience. I'm happy to see this movie. Now I see how Tarantino start this career with this movie and how this formula start. Because after this movie, you see other movie of Tarantino, you can see the same drop, the same technique used to create a story, a narration, and evolution of character. Some movie are bigger. This one is a little movie. I think this is a 1 billion budget for this movie. Back then, it was not famous, so yeah, enough the money to do something big. And you see something interesting with that. And yeah, like I say, is a interesting experience to see for discovery the Tarantino, but either for cinema himself because it's a unique movie. This movie is. I understand why, like I said, so many people love this movie. And not at the same level. I like this movie. I understand the quality behind. So yeah, but I'm curious to know your opinion about that. So I want to hear you guys.
What is your opinion on Reservoir Dogs Superbald? I massacred the name so many times. So, what are your thoughts on that movie?
I just noticed I have a line again that has to do with my picture window, and I've tried to fix that, but I would have to barricade it to block out all the light. So I'm gonna live with it. Yeah. So as I said, this is a movie that had a profound, impact on me when I was young. I've actually owned several different copies of it over the years. I originally had it on VHS, and then I had a DVD copy, one of the first DVDs I ever owned, but it was a crappy DVD. Like a lot of the very early DVDs, it was just they had just taken the laser disc version and transferred it to the DVD. Then I ended up getting. Makes me feel old because it was the 10-year anniversary edition of the movie, and the movie is now 33 years
33.
old. It was a special edition. It came in 4 different colors. And I got the Mr. Pink one. It came in these were the 4 different colors available. You could have Mr. Blonde, Mr. Pink, Mr. White, or Mr. Orange. Of course, I went with Steve Buscemi. Yeah, this I think I've mentioned it on the channel here before. There were 3 movies that made me want to go to film school, and those 3 movies were Reservoir Dogs, Clerks, and El Mariachi. And out of the 3, Clerks is the one that had the biggest impact on me, but Reservoir Dogs is really a close second. I first saw this movie not long after it came out. And I didn't see the whole thing. I just caught bits of it on cable. And at the time, it didn't do much of an impact on me. But I was like 11 or 12 when this came out. So at the time, I was just a little too young for it. And then a few years later, I think 2 years later, Pulp Fiction came out. That was the first Tarantino movie that I saw all the way through, and that one also didn't quite have a big impact on me at the time because I was, I don't know, maybe 13, 14. The first time I remember seeing Reservoir Dogs all the way through, I think I was 19 or 20, and it just blew me away. I had really started getting into. Well, I've been watching movies my whole life, but this was more around the time I started thinking maybe this is something I can do. And this movie just had a profound impact on me, and it just really changed the way I view movies. Um, yeah, it's and what the three movies that I've said that really made me want to go to film school. The what most impressed me about them is how they were able to do so much with so little. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Clerks or El Mariachi. Clerks was made for $27,000, and El Mariachi was made for $8,000.
Damn.
8,000.
Yeah,
That's even for the time. It's not a lot.
Is
yeah.
independent movie.
If ever we, excuse me, review El Mariachi, we'll get into the details of how that was accomplished. But sorry, Reservoir Dogs had a much bigger budget than those two movies. Had about 1.5 million, but that was still low budget for the time. And even today that's considered a micro budget. Um, yeah, but it just being able to do so much with so little. That's something that's always impressed me in movie making and in life in general. I've said it often that adversity breeds creativity. Um, it doesn't mean everything that comes out of that is perfect. Sometimes the lack of budget or the lack of resources shines through, and is evident, and the film suffers for it. But yeah, I was very impressed to how this movie just made use of what little it had. Um, and my brother-in-law once made an observation that I found really poignant. He said this movie is kind of like a play in a lot of ways because most of the action takes place in one location. There aren't very many camera moves. It's very dialogue heavy, reliant. Uh, but the few camera moves that it does have are used very effectively, especially that pulled back shot where Mr. White and Mr. Pink are arguing with each other, and then we see Mr. Blonde, who's just casually leaning on a pole, drinking a soda. um, yeah, trunk shots, which was a Tarantino staple. Um, I didn't see what was that just flashed on the screen. I just saw Mr. Pink something. Mr. Pink Diamonds. Ah, yes. You're giving spoilers there, dude. Actually, well, I'll get to that when I get to the end. He doesn't get away. So I'm reading through my notes. I wrote a lot of notes just because of this movie, what this impact the movie had on me. I've always been a fan of show, don't tell, which is why sometimes I hate clunky expository dialogue. But a movie like this is very dialogue heavy and reliant because a lot of the important events take place off screen, and that's fine. Not everything has to be that way. And this movie is also the antithesis of what's called Chekhov's gun. Chekhov's gun is a principle in storytelling that everything you draw attention to has to serve some sort of purpose in the story, and this movie is like the complete opposite of that. There's lots of pop culture discussions. The whole breakfast scene is the entire thing is completely irrelevant to the plot coming up. All kinds of discussions about pop culture. The whole thing where Tim Roth's character is rehearsing the made-up story he's going to tell the guys to try to get in with them, and a lot of it's not relevant, but it does serve a purpose because I find it helps make these characters real, makes them believable. These are real people. Um, because a lot of movies, characters are not realistic at all. They don't talk the way real people do. Um, uh,
Is there
And
anything
so,
else you'd like to show?
oh, I have a
Yeah,
lot to say actually. I'm just
that's
going
fine.
through I'm skipping over some stuff I put in my notes that it's kind of redundant. Um, uh, a lot of, yeah, and as Matt was saying, like, he recognizes the Tarantino formula. Yeah, a lot of Tarantino hallmarks were established in this movie. Pop culture references, homages to different old movies, old movie genres, uh, trunk shots, graphic violence, stylized dialogue, um, and a lot of the things he did do in this, he would then. I'm not talking about story elements, but more his film style. He reused heavily, especially in his next movie, Pulp Fiction. Uh, so in a lot of ways, Reservoir Dogs walk so that Pulp Fiction could run. uh, and this came out, of course, early '90s, around the same time as a lot of indie movies. So this helped to usher in the indie movie wave of the early to mid '90s. This came out around the same time as movies like Slacker by Richard Linklater. Then, of course, Clerks that came out a few years later, El Mariachi, and of course Pulp Fiction. Pulp Fiction was an independent movie. It did have a pretty decent budget and some star power, but it was still an independent, what be considered an indie movie. Um, and it helped to launch the careers of Richard Linklater, Kevin Smith, Robert Rodriguez, Tarantino. Um, so yeah, Quentin Tarantino, he worked in a video store and pretty much watched every single movie in the video store. I can relate to that. I grew up in a small town. I never worked in a video store, but I grew up in a small town where there was really not a whole lot to do. So I spent a lot of time watching movies off of cable and from our little local video store. And I rented almost every movie in that video store. There were a few times I went there and left empty-handed because I just couldn't find anything that I was interested in watching because I had seen everything. And originally, he was going to just make this movie with some friends of his in black and white. He had somehow gotten about $30,000. He was going to film in black and white on 16 millimeter, and Tarantino himself was going to play Mr. Pink. His friend Lawrence Bender, who ultimately ended up producing this movie or co-producing it, he was going to play the character of Nice Guy Eddie, which is the boss's son. And he was also going to do double duty. He was going to play a police officer chasing Mr. Pink. The script was a lot less developed, and it ended up becoming there were fewer characters as well. It was going to really, I don't even think it would have been like a feature length thing. It probably would have been a short film. But Lawrence Bender, he gave the script to his acting teacher, and through there, it ended up in the hands of Harvey Keitel, who played Mr. White. He was a character actor in Hollywood. Wasn't very well known, but he had been I think he was in The Deer Hunter. I can't remember for sure, but he was in Mean Streets and Taxi Driver. He had worked with Martin Scorsese. He was a guy, who had some pull, a bit of pull. He had contacts, and he loved the script. So he decided to co-produce it, and he shopped that around, and he was able to raise $1.5 million in financing to make the movie. Keitel even paid for casting sessions in New York to try to get some decent talent attached to this movie, and that's how they got Steve Buscemi, Michael Madsen, and Tim Roth.
A lot of talented people.
Yeah. And a lot of people who were at the time unknown and would later become movie stars did audition. Thank you, man. Thank you. Viggo Mortensen auditioned, George Clooney, David Duchovny. They were all kind of very unknown at the time. They auditioned. Tim Roth's agent wanted him to play either Mr. Pink or Mr. Blonde, but Tim Roth insisted on playing Mr. Orange because, in his own words, he says, "I want to be an Englishman pretending to be an American, playing a cop pretending to be a robber." The filming did have some issues, mostly to do with Lawrence Tierney, who played the big boss there, the Joe Cabot, um, because that dude had a reputation for being pretty much a fucking psychopath. um, Apparently, the cast hated him by the end of the first week. Um, and because of his age and other issues, he had trouble remembering dialogue as well. Anyways, it was
What?
yeah,
Wow,
mhm,
that's sad.
yeah, yeah. I'll get. I have stuff about that a little further down in my notes. Yeah, the dude had a reputation for being a bit of a nut. um, the warehouse where they filmed this was actually an old mortuary that was filmed with leftover embalming equipment, caskets, and an old hearse, and they just left all there. Um, the scene where we see Mr. Orange's apartment was actually just filmed like in a vacant room um, on like the second floor of that warehouse, and they just painted it up for it to look like an apartment. So again, making use of what little they had. Um, this movie was very much an homage to different types of movies, a lot of like heist and crime movies from the 1970s, few elements referred to like French New Wave films like Jean-Luc Godard, and also Hong Kong films. Tarantino said that he was very much inspired by Stanley Kubrick's The Killing. That was one of Stanley Kubrick's very early movies, and it's about a heist that goes wrong, and uh, you can see the influences in this movie. Um, I think that's one of Tarantino's strengths as a filmmaker. He can take so many influences and put them in sort of like a melting pot and make something new out of it. It can also be one of his weaknesses at times when the movie becomes more about homage and reference than the actual story. Um, but that's not the case with Reservoir Dogs, though. Um, so the title, what does Reservoir Dogs actually mean? um, Tarantino has done. He's given a lot of flippant answers over the years. He used to make stuff up. He said, "Oh, it's a French term for villains in a movie or something like that." Um, Apparently, again, you have to take this with a grain of salt. The real origin of the title is when he was working in a video store. Um, he recommended a film to somebody, to a customer. He recommended the French film Au revoir les enfants by Louis Malle. And obviously, being American, he probably pronounced au revoir as au revoir. And the customer apparently replied, I don't want to see no Reservoir Dogs. And he liked the sound of it and decided to keep it at for like a future project, supposedly. Take that with a grain of salt. um,
I thought dogs was a reference to like cops and that kind of stuff. That
could
was the
be.
only
I,
thing I
I,
could
I,
see in the
Yeah.
I
title.
think the same. I think the same.
The concept of having uh, characters just have a bunch of different color names instead of using their real names. It is kind of smart in a way because they don't know their names, so they can't write each other out. But at the same time, they all know what they look like. So, but that concept came from the original version of the movie, uh, Taking of Pelham 123. They did make a remake of that with John Travolta, which I've never seen, so I don't know if they reused that particular element, but that's where that comes from. Now, there is a Hong Kong movie from the 80s that in English the title is City on Fire. And a lot of people have accused Reservoir Dogs of being just a complete ripoff of that movie. I actually did manage to find a copy of that movie a long time ago, so I have seen it. And I'm not going to say it's a ripoff, but there is a lot of borrowing. There are a lot of shots that are very similar or almost the same. A lot of plot elements are the same. Um, it has to do with a cop who goes undercover and a heist that goes wrong. In that movie, we actually do see the heist take place. So there's that one difference. But yeah, there's a lot of liberal borrowing from that movie. Now for the cast, Lawrence Tierney as Joe Cabot, the big boss, a big imposing guy who played a lot of like heavy characters, gangsters, tough guys for decades in movies. He appeared in everything from Star Trek: The Next Generation to Seinfeld. And almost everybody who's worked with him said that he was like a really volatile nutcase, and he was very hard to work with. When he appeared on Seinfeld, Jerry Seinfeld said that the entire cast was terrified of him. But damn, did that guy deliver, though. He was really good at what he did. Yes, that is true, Gray. I don't even think I made note of that in my notes, but yes, that is a good framing device. Nice guy Eddie, who is Joe Cabot's son. He was played by the late Chris Penn, who was actually Sean Penn's brother. Fortunately, he never had like as big a career as his brother. He always played kind of bit parts here and there, and sadly he passed away 10, 15 years ago, and he wasn't that old. I think he was maybe 40-ish or so. I'm not sure what he died of. I don't remember. Mr. White, Harvey Keitel, excellent character actor. And this movie kind of helped to relaunch his career a bit because he had been in a lot of great movies, 70s, early 80s, but then he was kind of fading away a bit. And in the 90s, he had a bit of a renaissance, and I think this movie helped. This is actually the same year that he appeared in Sister Act, of all things. It was the same year. I don't think Reservoir Dogs is what got him into that movie. It was just a coincidence. Mr. Orange, the great Tim Roth. I believe this was one of his first American movies, and boy, does he nail it. He is just perfect in this movie. His English accent does slip a couple of times, though. But overall, yeah. There were actually two bits of foreshadowing in the movie involving Mr. Orange. When Nice Guy Eddie is driving to the warehouse after he's learned of like the botched heist, we see his car drive by, and there's an orange balloon following it. Foreshadowing, or Mr. Orange is the rat. Also, and this one is very subtle and might not even have been intentional. During the breakfast scene, when Joe Cabot comes back from the bathroom and he asked, "Hey, who didn't put in $1?" Mr. Orange immediately says it was Mr. Pink. He was ratting him out. Mr. Blonde, Michael Madsen, again a great character actor who I haven't seen in a good while. The last time I saw him in something, the dude, his voice was, oh my God, I don't know what happened to his voice. I don't know if he's a heavy smoker or something, but my God, he sounds like an 80-year-old woman who's been smoking 5 packs a day for the last 60 years. That's what he sounds like now. Not in this movie, but now. He was also in the Kill Bill movies. I don't remember if he was any other Tarantino project. Of course, his code name is Mr. Blonde. His real name, or rather his character's real name, is Vic Vega. And his character is actually the brother of John Travolta's character from Pulp Fiction, who is Vincent Vega. At one point, Tarantino even thought of making a sort of prequel movie with those two actors called the Vega Brothers or something like that, but that never happened. The edition that I have, there's actually a featurette where they interview some of the cast and interview Michael Madsen, and he said, "This is definitely the movie I'm going to be remembered for." He says, like, I'm not going to be remembered for Free Willy because he was in Free Willy. Mr. Pink, Steve Buscemi. That's why I chose, out of the available colors for this box, that's why I chose this one. The great Steve Buscemi. I don't know if he was all that well known at the time. I think he was making a name for himself as a character actor at the time. But my God, he is just the best character, best actor in this movie. And you can tell this character was originally written for Tarantino because he talks a mile a minute. He's high-strung, always on edge. And if you've ever seen an interview with Tarantino, that dude can talk. And however, Mr. Pink does not get away at the end of the movie. If you listen carefully, while um, Mr. Orange and Mr. White they've been shot. They had the Mexican standoff and they're both shot. And Mr. Orange admits to Mr. White that he's a cop. You can very faintly hear in the background a shootout between Mr. Pink and the police who are waiting outside.
Tragic ending.
Yeah, nobody gets away. Mr. Brown, or Mr. Shit, as he liked to call himself, or didn't want to be called. Oh, hell yeah. Tarantino shouldn't cast himself in anything. That's exactly what I'm getting to. Mr. Brown, or Mr. Shit, as he didn't want to be called. Quentin Tarantino himself, playing Mr. Brown. This is the only bit of acting that I've ever seen him where I think he actually did okay. He was all right in From Dusk Till Dawn as well, but this dude cannot act. Great director, cannot act. Oh my God. I'm not even going to get into Django Unchained and his horrible Australian accent, but and finally, Mr. Blue, Eddie Bunker. He's passed on. He was a former convict who later became an author, an actor, a screenwriter. I'm not exactly sure how he ended up in this movie, but that dude was a convict in real life. And for the life of me, I can't remember which movie it was, but we reviewed a movie recently, and I distinctly remember saying that a character in that movie was based on Eddie Bunker, but for the life of me, I can't remember what freaking movie that was. It might have been Heat, but I'm not sure.
I think that's Heat.
Quite possible, but which character in Heat? Maybe Robert De Niro's character, I'm not sure, but I know... For the life of me, I can't remember. But anyways. Oh, yes. I forgot about that one. Yeah. Not even going to get into that. Now, rewatching this movie after such a long time. It's been a long... I can't count the amount of times I saw this movie when I was younger. But rewatching it after such a long time... I was afraid of maybe it not holding up. And it still does. However, I am older. I am wiser. At least I hope I am. And I don't see it the same way that 19-year-old me saw it. I was blown away that time. Oh my God, movies can be like this, No, it's still a great movie. But I think some of its flaws are more apparent now, and also some elements might not have aged well. This movie has been heavily criticized, especially by Spike Lee and other people, for its liberal use of the N-word. I think that use does fit in the movie just because these are cold-blooded killers. It's not character assassinations to reveal, oh, you know what, they're racist too. But yeah, being a black person, I could see myself being triggered, or at least finding jarring to hear its used so casually. Other than that, though, I think it still holds up really well. And yeah, as I said earlier, this is a movie that had a profound impact on me on the time, and it's difficult for me to actually put into words what kind of impact it had on me as in my 19-year-old brain. And oh my God, this is what movies can be. Maybe I can do this. Yeah, so that's pretty much. I've already said way too much, and I don't think I have anything else to add.
Oh, it's okay.
You never say too much. I like it to see the passion and the love for that movie, and you're the older here, and not only that, but you're very experienced. You've seen a lot of things, so it's very fun to have your perspective as someone that has seen the movie when it kind of came out, or not that long after it came out. This is always a very fun perspective. So thank you for sharing. And I guess this is my goal. I like that movie, but I found some issues. And as usual, maybe I'm crazy, but I will say that the first issue I had with that movie, the characters, I thought they were forgettable. After watching that movie, I was like, there's a rat among them, and that's all I could remember of the characters.
You say
The
that
rat,
about every.
that's
You say
it.
that about every movie. Though the characters are forgettable.
Not every movies,
They're
but
not for me, mind you. I've seen this movie more times than I can count, and I can probably recite it in my sleep. So maybe for me that's why they're not forgettable. But
but I will admit one great thing about that movie: the acting was solid. So they were really cool. I couldn't remember the characters after, but I was like, "Oh, these actors are cool. I want to see more of them." Um, and the next issue I got was mostly at the start of the movie. I
Grace says something funny about you.
yeah. No, I review. Pacing wasn't great for the five first minutes when they spoke about effing and man body parts. I was bothered by that sequence. I was like, man, why am I wasting time with that? Like, maybe it's to make the characters memorable, but it didn't work for me. I was just bothered by these characters, and that was like in the first 5 minutes. But these were my issues. And Gray mentioned the music. I agree with Gray. The music was solid. I think among the movies we covered
oh
recently,
hell yeah,
the music in Reservoir Dogs is probably the finest, the best one. I really enjoyed the
that's another
music.
one of Tarantino's strengths is making use of existing music, and especially older gems like especially his his very early movies had a lot of influences from the 1970s, and there's a lot of like 1970s music in his movies, especially in Reservoir Dogs. There's the whole thing about K. Billy's super sounds of the 70s, and as Great saying in the chat, yes, Little Green Bag, the intro song when they're walking past the brick wall, which is what I have on the wall here. That's a canvas print that a good friend of mine gave me a long time ago for having as a gift for having been his best man.
And
Yes, stuck in the middle with you.
another really good thing about that movie, I thought the makeup was very cool, and the arguments between characters were enjoyable, and uh, the speech about society early in the movie was very fun. I like that a lot. What else? Well, the flashbacks were cool. The bloody guy shooting down the psycho was fun. Entertaining discussion between the cop, prisoner, and the criminals. And again, I see acting being good again in the things in my notes. The dying cop admitting is a cop triggered a nice reaction of anger and sadness from one of the survivor of the bloodbath. Everyone shooting each other down, that was something. Again, there's a lot of great memorable moments. I just wished the characters were as memorable as some of the scenes. Uh, the reveal
I
of
think you have some sort of memory problem, dude, because these characters are definitely memorable.
um, the reveal of the dying guy being cop was fun. So again, I think that movie was entertaining, enjoyable, and you said it could have worked as a play because most of the movie takes place in the same place,
hmm
and
I think it's a movie that could be, if they ever wanted to do that, could easily be adapted into a play.
it works. It
hmm
works very well. And sometimes when you got the same set, it can get boring and not that great, but it worked wonderfully with that movie. And the bloodbath in the end was just peak entertainment. Again, I enjoyed that movie. I think it's a very good pick, and I understand why 33 years later we still talk about that movie, and there's still people that want to hear about it because we got one of the best performing stream during the stream in quite some time now. So I feel like people still want to hear some other people talking about Reservoir Dog. Um, and it's a shame I didn't see that movie prior or before. It's a fun experience. Go watch
Yeah.
that. I don't have a lot more to say. It was just a fun trip. And thank you, Superbald, for suggesting such movie. So I will ask the panel, are we adding anything else?
Um, There's something I wanted to bring up, and I forgot what it was. Oh yeah, you were talking about the makeup. One thing though that even back then when I first saw this that I found completely unrealistic is the amount of blood that Mr. Orange loses. That dude would have been dead. It'd have been dead 10 times over if he had actually lost that amount of blood. Even I remember seeing an interview with Tim Roth a long time ago where he said, like, when they would get him ready for shooting that day, they would just drench him in like gallons of fake blood. So like they apparently like measured it once, and it's like about twice what the amount of blood that is actually in the human body. I agree with you, Gray, on that one.
I also feel like it's a trope of Quentin Tarantino to have a lot of blood.
Oh yeah. That's
Yeah.
something he got from like samurai movies, though. I'm just going back through the
He is
notes.
watching.
Yes, Greg mentions in the private chat that one of the best conversations about tipping committed to celluloid. I agree with that, and I agree with Mr. Pink's view on tipping in a weird way. I tip. I'm not one of those assholes who doesn't tip. I definitely tip, and I tip generously. I used to deliver food, so I know what it's like, and I try to tip generously whenever I can. But I think tipping is such a useless step. Just pay people livable wages so that they don't have to rely on tips. But anyways, that's a whole other societal thing. But just pay people fucking a livable wage so they don't have to rely on goddamn tips. Anyways, that's all I have to say about that.
Amazing. Since you got the spotlight, I will ask you, what would be your grade out of 10 for Reservoir Dogs?
I am, just because of the impact this movie's had on me, I'm tempted to give it a perfect 10, but it has its flaws, and I'm not looking it through rose-colored glasses anymore because it's been so long. But still, my God, this movie holds up, and I am going to give it a 9.5.
Thank you for sharing, and you will be shocked, but I gave the same exact grade, 9.5 as well.
I think that's the first time you and I have given the same grade.
Yeah, there's always a first time for everything.
Yeah.
So I like that movie, and among the 9.5, it's one of the highest one of the best. And I will just disregard what Gray said.
No, let me
And I will ask
let me have a look there.
Matt.
Knowing Gray, it's probably
Gray
very poignant.
is right about you, Multi. You need to think about that.
Yes, that is true. Gray
what
said
is your grade out of
that
10,
you
Matt?
gave the worst film of the year a perfect 10. So
Yeah,
I'm forced to agree with Gray.
yeah,
Did
yeah.
you? I've
You have a
seen it at
ranking
least.
problem and you have a memory problem. You need to take care of that.
We're
my
gonna have
friend.
to have an intervention with you, dude, because this is.
Gray need to go back again. Go to the podcast with us to talk with you about that because
Mhm.
you need help, man. So yeah, for me, it was not. I was not impressed like you about the movie. I like the movie. I understand why this movie is a classic. So for me, it's a strong 8 of 10. But it's not a total phenomenal movie. I like the concept, I like the character, a good casting. You can see the formula of Tarantino back then. So yeah, for me, a strong 8 for this movie.
Oh, well, that's interesting. Thank you for sharing. And I guess
Sorry
for the
to
main
interrupt you, but Gray says in the chat, I'm
yeah.
trying to join, but it's not working for some reason. He says that other than that, you're a great guy, though, and I second that. I know we give you a hard time sometimes, but you're a good dude, Multi.
Yeah,
Trying to be.
that's true.
Trying
That's
to be. Trying to be.
Sorry, I didn't mean
Uh,
to interrupt you.
that's fine. So again, thank you guys for sharing. And what do you have going on your end of the internet, Matt?
Like usual, I see stuff and I write about them, but in French or not for the audience of this podcast. Other than that, I'm a boring life. I work, I'm gaming, I go to cinema, and I repeat and repeat. So yeah, nothing new for me. So you guys, nothing, and you have the new thing going on?
Superbald.
Nope.
Anything going on? No.
Nope. I'm
It's
hoping.
tragic.
I know we're taking a well-deserved break for a while.
Yeah.
When we come back in the fall, I'm hoping to have a lot of things taken care of, so they'll give me more time to review other movies with you, not just the ones we do on the Red Blue, but other ones, movies that are in the theaters and other things, and maybe, and I've been saying this for a long time, start my own projects. Hopefully, I'm hoping very, very much.
I hope for
Looking
you.
forward to
Thank
that.
you. Thank you.
And again, Superbald said it. The Red Blue podcast will be on break. In 2 weeks, we do a James Bond special, but then we are really off for the rest of the summer. But on the channel, there's still a lot of other show that will replace the Red Blue for a short period of time. And Thursday or Friday, depending what happens in real life, we will talk about Mission Impossible, the final reckoning, the final disappointment. That's kind of the premise of the discussion we will have about the U.S. installment of the Tom Cruise franchise.
You see the worst?
The final disappointment. The
Okay.
worst is the second one,
Yeah.
but it's the final disappointment. But the second Mission Impossible is like rock bottom, and it's kind of a shame that the final reckoning still addressed that mistake in the franchise. But hey, cannot wait to talk about the final disappointment. So yeah, that's Thursday or Friday. We will talk, Matt, about that backstage. With that being said, next week, no Red Blue, and I will miss the show for at least 2 weeks, and then for the rest of the summer. But by the end of June, I will start a new show where we talk about movies and TV shows just like right now. But the big difference, it will be adaptation of books, comic book, novel, and we will talk about Superman. I cannot wait to talk about Superman. This will be fun. But this is only in June. Time flies. With that being said, the show is kind of over for tonight. Thank you a lot, guys. In 2 weeks, James Bond, and after that, a break. And I will miss those Tuesdays where we all talk about movies. So I guess this is the segue to the ending.
Yeah, Red Blue podcast. Come check the scene. Movies old and new. Know what I mean? The Red Blue podcast. Come check the scene. Movies old and new. Know what I mean?